Hi, audience. Welcome to our Blue Margin Expert Insights series. We're glad you joined us. This series is for the benefit of mid-market executives and PE partners who are looking to use data to put plans into action and to increase returns on their investments. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Andy Scott. Andy served as Chief Technology Officer of Hydromax USA, a private equity-backed company that provides field services and solutions for gas, water, and wastewater infrastructure using advanced technology and data analytics. Blue Margin began working with Hydromax last fall, focusing on data visibility to help improve operations and productivity. A little more background on Andy. He has 35 years of global business operations and technology leadership across a wide range of industries. He has a proven track record for delivering growth and M&A transactions through digital transformation strategies. Before taking the technology helm at Hydromax, Andy was the Chief Product and Technology Officer for G2 Integrated Solutions and VP of Digital Project Management at Lloyd's Register. His pedigree goes on to include positions as CIO, Managing Director, and Board Director, among other roles. Welcome, Andy. We're so glad you joined us today to talk about this big, wide world of data.
Thanks, John. It's a pleasure to be here and working with you.
Yeah, thank you. So, Andy, to open things up, can you give us just the elevator pitch on what Hydromax does in the market, what their value proposition is, so we know the context of what you came from most recently?
Yeah, well, Hydromax is a field services-based organisation, and very early in their lifetime, they had identified data as being absolutely critical to the organisation. Quite frankly, the founders were worried that they might kill somebody if they got something wrong. So they've been a very data-centric organisation from the start. So they're working in the water, wastewater, and gas environments, and they're out there inspecting, collecting information about those assets. But with a very high focus on high accuracy, high fidelity information and high accuracy location using GPS. So data and technology empowered field services organization who can take that data and then turn that into reliable and confident data using back-end QC processes as well as the front-end QA to really deliver a confident data set to the clients that allow them to make insights and insightful decisions in the future.
About their infrastructure, what to maintain, what to repair, what to add, so on and so forth.
Yeah, when to shut something down because it's leaking.
Yeah, right.
Or anything like that.
Okay, great. So as a tech leader, what is your view on the role of data in running a business? I understand that data was central to the product offering at Hydromax, but internally, how do you view data in day-to-day operations, finance, and so on?
Well, I think the data is the lifeblood of the organization. And I often refer to data being an asset in its own right. And I think in many organizations, it's often overlooked. And that causes a lot of internal stress points about whether the data is accurate or it's not accurate. So the data is something that runs through all the organization, all the processes, no matter what industry that you're in, whether it's field services or manufacturing or electronics. So I think, from the CTO's type of perspective, you need to be really focused on not just the technology, which a lot of people are. They like to look at the nice shiny things that are up there, but really focus on that data, treating it an asset in its own right. And then you can leverage that throughout the organization, but make sure that there's one version of the truth of that data.
Yeah.
That same data is used by finance, is the same data that's used by operations, the same that's used by safety or anybody else.
Do you typically push to have a data warehouse? Is that a given in a company you'd run?
I think data warehouse of some form depends what the organization is. In Hydromax's case, we had an enterprise database that was really for the client's data and managing that. So building a separate data warehouse that could be accessible by the organization and used for other purposes in running the business was high on the agenda for us.
Yeah. We worked with you on dashboards around productivity. I think that they helped with a shift in productivity. Any thoughts on what the secret sauce was, or what it was that caused that boost in productivity with that visibility into data?
I think there's a few elements. One, we tried to do it ourselves a couple of times, and we'd failed. There was being able to agree what data we wanted, different requirements between finance and operations, and we had the skill set to do it. But I think bringing you guys in Blue Margin in allowed us to really focus in on the data that was important to us. Using you as an external resource, you sort of impartial and challenged at the right times. When you're all in the same organization, it can get quite tense. And then I think there was some key things in there. One was really the user interface and thinking through how does it become relevant, whether I'm a field crew guy using a phone in the field or I'm an executive with a nice big 25-inch screen sat on my desk. And I think that helped drive the adoption of the technology. It allowed us to figure out what new data we needed to collect. And then really from there, it was quite easy for us to provide that visibility of trends, the daily information, and very quickly, almost immediately, there was some things identified, or it surfaced some issues that I'm sure had been there for years. But in the very start, it surfaced those issues, allowed us as leadership team to actually act on them there and then. And I think for me that was quite an eye opener of how quick the technology, the dashboard technology, could, and working with an external partner, could actually help you achieve that.
Yeah, and we didn't pay you to say that. No.
Nah. I mean, I've got to say from the start, I might have been, not totally in favour of the process, but I was evangelist at the end of where we got to. It really helped us as an organisation.
Was that a resistance to bringing in an outside partner when you had the skill set internally, or what part were you not a fan of to begin with?
I think part of it was we had the skill sets internally, but also I was nervous of our ability to be able to articulate properly what it was that we wanted, and I think that's where your people helped us be able to articulate what we wanted. So we didn't get that scope creep that we always got internally, that you never got finished.
Yeah, it does bring that outside perspective. We have to be able to see your business from the inside out, as opposed to saying, what do you want to see, which we have tried. 235 clients, we have found every way to do it wrong. That's one of them. So digging in and saying, look, we're lame in your domain. You've got to make us aware, I think helps clarify things. Besides sort of productivity and smoothing operations, did you see any impacts on culture, employee engagement, employee satisfaction? Notice anything along those lines?
Yeah, I think the previous efforts we'd had, people started to adopt it and then faded away because there were concerns about the data quality and issues like that. And I think, as I said, the UI was useful to everybody and easy to understand. And the fact that for the first time with the platform we had, we could make that available to everybody and then drive that accountability, that you could no longer say, well, hell, I didn't know that. That information was there in your hand or on your desk, and it really drove accountability throughout the organization, and allowed us to do some interesting things with incentive programs and things like that as well, to reward people for surpassing their targets.
Yeah, if you have more specific, more empirical measures on what people are supposed to do, what they're accountable to do, as opposed to a sort of vague and constant pressure to do better, that can help with accountability. And accountability, we think, is one of the big motivators and organizers of people. As a tech leader, you oversee everything from cybersecurity to infrastructure to you name it. Where does data rank among the assets that a CTO oversees in terms of importance and position?
I think he's right there. I mean, clearly security is important and can take a business under. But the data to me sits right at the top of the pyramid, because that's the knowledge of the organization. It's what you can leverage to really drive the business forward. So yeah, it's right up there. I think it's different skill sets to deliver those. You've got to structure your organization to pay the right amount of attention to that data, and how it's been stored and how it's being used. And I think as a CTO, sometimes you've got to remind yourself, I need to get out there and see how people are using the technology and how people are collecting the data and what data is important to them, and then bring that back into the investment planning and items, just to make sure that you're keeping honest and keeping things moving in the right direction.
So not just stay in the boardroom with strategy and planning, but actually go out and meet with folks. Is that part of what you did?
Yeah, see what they're doing, look over the shoulder.
Yeah.
Get told in sometimes quite blunt terms what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah. We've sort of adopted the stance that most, if not all, business problems at the root of them are poor visibility. How does that position strike you? Too strong? Reasonable?
No, I think I agree with you on that.
Yeah. So tell me if you've worked at companies where they were not data-driven in the way that Hydromax or maybe other ones you've worked at were. Do you see a dividing line or some distinct characteristics of those that are maybe buried in an Excel jungle versus those that have more clarity?
And I think some of my experience is people try data transformation initiatives and then drift back into spreadsheets because they didn't work, which is creating more data silos and more uncertainty and everything like that. And I have worked in organizations like that, some pretty major global organizations as well, and some smaller. And I think what it creates is that lack of visibility creates, I just expect, a lot more tension in the business, a lot more angst. Nothing's smooth. It's sort of this sort of sharp tooth effect as some data surfaces to the top and you all run around with your hair on fire. And I think being a data-driven company allows you to look at those leading indicators and identify issues sooner and have a plan. So I think the dividing line, is around creating an environment that the business can focus on growth and performance, as opposed to that running around in firefighting mode every few minutes. I think there's a clear distinction.
Yeah. So, sort of freeing yourself to focus on strategy and execution versus reactivity. That sort of thing. And
stopping people creating this, what I call a cottage industry of these spreadsheets and various other initiatives where, particularly in larger organizations, perhaps if you're running a large ERP project, the people come off the bench and are put into that environment. And there's some benefit in making it complex so that you've got a job for life, making those data structures complex. And I'm from the keep it simple camp and really understand strip away the complexity, what data is really driving the performance of the business, and let's surface that, and that's the information that we want. And I think that's the process Hydromax went through with your team.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I wanted to ask you, in those experiences where maybe they had a BI initiative that did not take hold, maybe those large organizations, can you recollect maybe one or two pitfalls that might be common to companies as to why that didn't happen? Because we see that a lot and we have our theories, but I'd be interested in your perspective.
I think, there's a lot of interconnected reasons why they fail. And, I found myself actually over the years being brought into a lot of those organizations that have had those failed initiatives, or maybe fails and failed. The initiatives haven't recognized the value that they were first expected to see. I think one of the things that people miss is any technology project, particularly around this, is actually a change management project. you need to think of it as a change management project. You need to have a senior executive taking an active ownership of the project. Think about the culture. We spoke about that earlier. How's it going to achieve that full adoption? How's it going to impact the individuals? Those are sorts of questions you really need to ask and be addressed, and then focus on communication. Let people know what's happening, because a communication void is not good. I mentioned keep it simple. I'm a great fan of Gall's law, which is all complex systems that work started as a simple system that worked. So start there and keep improving it. My interpretation, and I think this is what we were doing with you again, is plan big, start small. So build a strategy that defines the destination where you want to get to, and then define the journey by building a roadmap that gets you there. And here's the thing, that you probably never get to the destination because it moves, and the journey comes a windy road. But at least you've got to have a vision for where you want to get to. And then you think about how you're going to measure the success of that investment. I think if you do that, you get a lot more success in deploying this. And again, this isn't just because I'm on this call, but the final piece of advice is utilize external resources to help you. And in a PE environment, that can be potentially an add back as well. So, but you use that, and you're not talking about handing over the project in its entirety, because you've got, like I said earlier, you've got to have that ownership. But having someone to help you to go through that thought process I think is vital, and bring that expertise of people that have worked with other similar organisations over and over and over again, and have seen the same pitfalls and made mistakes, and they're corrected on those mistakes in the next one. So I think if you do that, it really significantly improves your chances of success.
Yeah, we haven't made mistakes here. Actually, one of the big ones that we continually overcome is just what you said. It's very easy to say we're going to do this business intelligence, this dashboarding initiative, and before you know it, you're designing features and functionality, and you've forgotten about the benefits and how are we measuring this, and what is the impact? What's the outcome that we want to impact? Where is it now? Where do we want it to be, and when? And are we going to measure that? And what would that mean in dollars to the top line and the bottom line? That conversation is the pulling of the teeth in our discovery. I'm not sure why, since business is all about return on investment. I think it's just we want to get started and get busy and not do the heavy lifting on thinking and strategy to say, where are we going with this and why? What does it mean in dollars?
Yeah, I think you've absolutely got to do that and think what the measurement is. Okay, is it actually dollars? Is that the return, or is the measure of success something completely different?
Safety, retention.
Yeah, whole range of things. Too often you're focused on IRR and
right.
All these measurements just to try and get some conformity of measurement. But I think you've got to be open to other.
Yeah. So a little more ground level. What do you think makes a good dashboard? However you want to come at that is great.
I think it comes back to my simplicity again. Keep it simple, clean. Don't clutter it. Try and keep it visual. I'm a visual person, so if I want to see the numbers, I'm going to click on something and get to the numbers. But make it so it's visual in terms of things will jump out at me. A good dashboard will really lead you to where the problem is. It's done some of the analysis for you, and the graphics and the interface will help you do that. Because I haven't got time to look at everything, but I just want something to hit me right between the eyes, and that's what I'm going to spend the next hour, day, month, year trying to solve. So I think that's it, and delivering the information that people need, understanding and I said before, in Hydromax, when we try to do it, finance needs one set of information and see it in one format, and operations need to see that in a different format. So a good dashboard has the flexibility to utilize the same data, but just represent it in a different way that's useful to individuals.
Yeah. From my perspective, we found an Achilles heel in dashboard design is order taking. You go to the VP of sales and say, what KPIs matter to you? And they know that better than anyone. And they give you those and you put them on a page, and they've got sort of a subject-centric dashboard. And what we found is you need to understand what is their natural journey and narrative for having awareness of what's happening that matters, and then being able to analyze why is that happening, and then what details do I need to take action. And if you can do that, then you'll have it like a scoreboard on a sports field where all the fans and coaches and players are locked to it because it's the critical information you need now. And it's easy to overlook that as well, and we certainly have several times, but we're getting better and better.
Yeah. And that's where it comes to simplicity again, John, because as you can tell, although I live in Houston for 12 years, I'm not from these parts. But and looking at an example, I go to a baseball game and I look at the scoreboard. I have no idea what's going on.
Right.
I can see the score, but the rest of it, and so that in a way, I've seen dashboards that do the same. That the technical finance guys or somebody understands what they're looking at, but the rest of the management team.
How about a cricket scoreboard? Do you understand those?
I understand that, yeah, which is probably just as confusing to.
No, it's more.
And how you play for 5 days and it could be a draw, yeah.
Also, sort of on the practical level, does the platform matter? Power BI, Tableau, Snowflake, Azure.
I don't think so. I mean, we chose Microsoft, ecosystem, so it seemed natural to play there. We'd use Tableau. I think everybody has their pros and cons, but it's really the process that you go about doing the work that we talk about getting the requirement down and how you go through the iteration of that to deliver it. And if you do that, then
you're
a slight difference.
You're hired, Andy. Those are our talking points exactly. So a lot of times when a company sets out to embark on a data strategy, they go straight to artificial intelligence, machine learning, the advanced stuff. First of all, can you just give us a quick working understanding of those from your perspective?
For AI and machine learning?
Or AI, yeah, AI and machine learning, yeah.
So, to start with, excuse me, artificial intelligence, it replicates human intelligence and thought process, and only that computers can do it faster and more accurate than humans. So, and the AI solutions cover a whole range of themes and vary widely depending on which industry you're working in. I've worked in many, but include things like machine vision. So something we use in Hydromax, analyzing photos and videos. Voice recognition, Alexa and Siri and all these other various things that we use. Driverless cars we're starting to see on the road, heavens above. So that's one element. I think then machine learning falls under that AI banner and really replicates the human learning process. And it's using algorithms and other statistical models to look for patterns in that data. And again, use cases massive, but from automating admin and financial processes to managing the quality, the data integrity of that you have, asset performance management, sales. But I think they can drive significant improvements.
Okay.
But it's
you go.
But marketing guys really, and they've done this traditionally over the years with buzzwords and terminology that we use, of big data and all these past things, and they give the impression it can be done with limited effort. And I know there's more tools and things coming out, but it still takes effort and it takes thought. There's no magic switch you're going to flip.
Yeah.
And then you get to the data. I said before, machine learning needs data. If your data's no good, the conclusions your brilliant piece of software is going to come to is fundamentally flawed. Yeah. And so that's where the challenges come in with getting that core data, base data, to a point of confidence. So I think what I always ask myself and encourage people to ask is that key question: how is this going to create value in my organization? And and when's it going to do it?
And what's it cost to get it in place?
Yeah. Cost is pretty important, but So I think a lot of people sell the solutions, and it's very exciting. But unless you've got the data to drive what you're doing, then start lower down the food chain.
Yeah, it's hard not to look for a silver bullet in business. And when you see
Yeah,
something
and I think the other
shiny,
thing that people tend to sell business intelligence solutions and put, the buzzword is I'm going to put AI around it, and I'll see my sales trajectory increase. But all it is a business intelligence solution that we've seen for many, many, many years.
so you may have answered this, but are companies putting the cart before the horse or being forward thinking if they're going to AI and ML versus starting with just operational dashboards?
I think it depends. So in Hydromax's case, we built an AI machine learning model to look at identify crossbores. This is where gas pipes being horizontally drilled through a sewer main. And we had a lot of video. So we started there because we were the only organisation in the US that actually did 100% review, and that was manual. So you can imagine AI there had an immediate impact, but we didn't have to do a big project. We just had the data to use. So I think starting at the right point there was the right thing to do. In other areas where it's really reliant on data that you may or may not have, then yes, you're putting the cart before the horse, and you need to, getting the utilities industry people talking around using augmented reality and things to put, and it'll show you on your iPad where it is in the ground. Well, not many utilities in the US know where their infrastructure in the ground is. So the technology itself is great, but absolutely useless until somebody gets out there and maps the infrastructure, which is starting to happen, but will take a while.
Yeah, you need the data. Back on that data accuracy, data integrity, we have found in cases we'll deliver a financial report that's a few cents off on some total versus the spreadsheet that the executive's used to using, and that is some fraction of a percent, and yet their confidence goes away because they don't know if it's 10,000 this way and 10,000 and 1 cent that way. What's your sense of how accurate data needs to be? Is 99% sufficient, or how do you look at that?
I think it depends what you're using it for. So again, when I look at my experience, often I'm looking for the dashboard and the data to give me an indication. I don't need to get to 16 decimal places and a 6 sigma degree of confidence that information. I need it to say, hey, Andy, you need to go look to look in this area. I think when you're doing your financial reporting and everything else, then it becomes a different proposition. So I think that degree of accuracy to me isn't a major. It's got to be to the point where people just don't believe the data. But if it's 99 or even 98%, then it's just giving you that early warning instead of waiting for 3 months after the month end to tell you you've got a problem and you've already lost however many weeks before you action it. Then it's good enough. And they're the tensions I was talking to about earlier between finance. Then you've got to balance exactly in operations that just want to be told where they need to go next.
Right. In your experience, what are some of the most common causes of data integrity issues, and any advice for CTOs that are starting on or in the midst of a data initiative and wanting to address this? Because we did find at Blue Margin somewhere along the path early that data integrity was sort of first and foremost, to your point, that if the data's no good, doesn't matter what you analyze. Any thoughts on what you've seen there? Any advice?
I think you're keeping the QA QC process is important to consider, and when we always use those terms together, and actually they're at different ends of the process. So think about the quality assurance. If you leave things, if it's a mobile device, for instance, that we're using Hydromax, if you allow free-form entry without any validation, you're going to have a problem. But building logic into the data collection application, and then as other data may be ingested into the system, you're using AI and machine learning to look for anomalies that are coming in, so you get a much stronger feel that the data that's in your system is accurate. But then, QC is still as important to me anyway, because there's still going to be mistakes. But looking at ways, how are you going to automate that QC, take away the human element of it? But again, always be using techniques to look for how that quality of the data is within your system, and identify if anything's been changed. Once it's understanding why something's changed when it's in the system is critical.
Yeah.
Because I've often been in a position where everyone's pointing the finger at each other. But the reality is something changed, and you're looking at incorrect data.
Yeah. So you've been a leader in this digital transformation trend, speaking of buzzwords, but it's an important one. How can business executives who have seen initiatives flounder in data succeed where others have failed? What's sort of the starting point there? How do you look at it from the macro and then get down to the practical view?
I think, it's taking a step back and thinking of this as I mentioned, as a change management project, as a big project, as a project you're going to understand the steps that project's going to go through, just as you would for anything that you're delivering for a client. But the value isn't created by the data or by the process you're going through. It's the values created from the data or the change that a project delivers. I think too often we look at the project as a whole. So I think it's setting the plan, making sure that you want everyone, it's business 101, but everybody on the team understands their roles and responsibilities. I think often, even project sponsors, well, I'm just the sponsor. Well, hell no, you're accountable. You've got to drive this change through the organization. And if you do that and set the project up and run through it, and in those small chunks I spoke about earlier, every time, a bit like agile development, every time you deliver something, it adds some value. If there's a change in the marketplace, you've got to stop your investment. You can say, well, hell, we've got some improvement in what we did before. Don't go for that behemoth of a project that's going to deliver something in a year. Or I was once told with a client 4 years before they were going to see any impact. And then you wonder why people go build their own systems through cloud-based suppliers when they're told that. So keep it down into those small chunks and communicate. Yeah. Let people know where they're going to be. I think if you do that, you're going to stand a better chance of success.
Yeah, we found that those short sprints, first of all, you learn a lot as you go. Second of all, if you go away into the lab for too long, the data and the business is fluid. It changes, and you've now got an academic exercise that's no longer as applicable to what's happening in real operations. So that's great advice. So you've been a successful technology leader for quite a while. Data or any other topic, what are some of a big lesson that you've learned if you were to have a chance to pass a piece of wisdom on to someone heading into that field for the first time? They're going to be placed as CTO of a $250 million company in the mid-market in industrials or commercial services, field services. Mm-hmm. How do you approach a job like that goes beyond your 24 hours if you try to do everything? Any big lessons learned in sort of the difference between what makes a successful technology leader and those that really struggle? Because we've seen both. Yeah.
I think, first of all, people know we will laugh. We've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen. Listen to what your clients are telling you. Listen to what your people in your organization are telling you. And use that as a base for forming your strategy. I think, that really understanding how people use technology is, as I said before, that to me is the most critical thing. You can be a visionary and sit there, but unless you really start to see how people are using your technology, how it works in the field or in a factory or on an offshore rig or something like in a harsh environment, then you don't really understand. So it's around doing that and then building a team, giving them some headroom to do some R&D. I think if you keep everyone's nose to the grindstone 100% of the time you're not going to get the deals. You've got to give people some space to be innovative and come up with some ideas. I think if they do, it's got to go into so I think there's processes for innovation, processes for managing your investment decisions, executing, and then exploiting. But if you really get people, motivated, get your team thinking about it, that's where the ideas will come from. Don't think as a technology leader. People say, you know it all. Right. Actually, these days I don't actually know very much. Maybe I did 30 years ago, but I do know how to encourage people to bring those ideas forward and put them in a vehicle that will actually develop and encourage them and mentor them to come up with those ideas. So I think it's the best part of being a CTO is mentoring other people, trying to give them the business skills as well as the technical skills, which going on to, I think schools need to understand more about the softer side of the teaching, not just turning out technical geeks. I think those days have maybe gone, and if that's all you've got, you stand the risk of being outsourced to a cheaper part of the world. So you've got to show that not just your technical skills, you've got the business savvy as well. And I think that to me is the role of the CTO. It's not understanding every little bit of technology. Yeah. I'm a nightmare. I'll go to a conference and I'll see something. I don't know what it does, but I'll come and throw it over to someone and get them to do some research. Sometimes it turns out to be good, and sometimes it was not what I thought it was.
That's great. So to recap that a bit, your team and yourself, you need to give yourself headspace to think strategically, to look at the 50,000-foot view. If you're in the weeds, nose to the grindstone, you'll get lost. The other thing I heard is, and we've seen this, is I think a new CTO might sense that their job is to know everything, come in and start telling stuff instead of listening. And we've seen that not go well because there's so much to learn about the nuance of any given company. Those are important. And then thinking about dashboards. Oh, I lost my thought there, but I'll come back to it when I get there. Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. I'd like to wrap up. I just want to, first of all, ask leaders or readers, what books and podcasts, if you're listening to podcasts, are you into lately? Any recommendations?
So I'm not actually a great podcast listener, believe it or not. Well, I should be because I travel so much, but I do actually listen to the it's called Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. And you might say to me, what's that got to do with technology, data, and transformation? But I always draw close analogies to it, is that cycling is a team sport. You've got to leave your ego at home, because if you don't work as a team, someone isn't going to win. There's more technology being delivered either in terms of equipment or nutrition. Some of it's going to give you a marginal gain. Some of it's maybe just industry noise. Sounds similar to the AI machine learning. And then there's data, a lot of data. Cycling equipment is actually an IoT device. It's collecting temperatures, power, the whole pedaling smoothness, and then you've got wearables measuring sleep and heart rate, and it's bringing all that together. So I actually quite listening to that and then thinking, how does that relate to my job as a business, into some of those quite technical, scientific research that goes on into human performance. I think in terms of a book, the ones I've read recently is something called the Fruition Trilogy, and it's actually by a guy called Chris Potts, who it's actually 4 books. So go figure. Chris didn't plan well enough in advance, and they're a bit different than normal books that you read. Is that they're part novel, part textbook. Is the way he wrote them. And the reason I picked them up recently was back in about 1996. This guy's in the UK. I went to a workshop that he had called Marketing the IT Department, and it was absolutely not what I was expecting to be on. But I would say it's one of the most meaningful courses that I've ever been on, about challenging your thinking about understanding what the customer wants and what are you going to deliver and what your investment plans about it. And so I snapped these books up when they popped up on Amazon, and it's really taken that 1996 thinking and expanded it a bit. So yeah, that was quite an interesting
We'll
read.
put a link in the notes. I look forward to looking at it. It reminds me, our executive team has been enamored with a set of books and a podcast from a group of guys who are generally in the creative space, marketing and so on, but their perspective on the business of expertise has been illuminating. It has nothing to do with data or IT, but it's analogous lessons that have been really helpful. So that's great. It's been a real pleasure learning from you, Andy. I appreciate you taking the time. I'm curious what's next on the horizon for you.
So yeah, I mean, I hope it came over, but I get frustrated when technology has a really bad name. Missing deadlines, overspending, not delivering. We've all heard it. We've all been told it. So I'm really passionate now about trying to link or bridge the boardroom to the technology and the deliverables. And so I'm really excited that I'm creating my own consultancy, Cognitival Consulting, to really look to help small businesses, private equity firms, even startups to navigate the digital transformation and technology landscapes to really drive, capitalize on what there still is market opportunity out there, definitely. That all important growth and ultimately increase the value. So that's what I'm looking to do, and impart some of, before I hang my boots up, impart some of my mistakes and knowledge on some new people.
Are you going to be active in the mid-market private equity space with that, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the space I really understand and can help people with that softer side of the technology, and how to grow it and how to build those value propositions is really where I see myself operating.
That's great. And we'll put it in the notes too. What's the best way for folks to reach you if they want to reach out?
So people by all means reach out and call me on 281-684-7673. I'll send you the email. You can put it in the text, but it's easy. But yeah, reach out, even if it's just for a chat. What I really enjoy doing is learning about people's business models, because everyone's different and there's always a way to make some money.
I love that you still use a phone call. I can't get my kids to pick up their phone. That's just not on the table anymore.
John, I should have added that. That's the other important thing about a CTO. Tell people to get off the email and use this newfangled gadget called a telephone.
It's amazing.
Because it takes tension out of an organization.
Yeah. And it's synchronous audio back and forth in real time.
Yeah.
Great, Andy. Thanks so much. Look forward to speaking again soon and appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks for inviting me.
Take care.